Thank you everyone for making time tonight. Despite all the very long things, it's only so long because I'm quite old already. First and foremost, my most important task is, of course, being a member of the D6 Family Conference team. And also, I'm a wife and a mom. My girls are 23 and 20. Both of them study media. And so in my home, I'm like having a production house at home sometimes, all figuring out, how to steward technology for Christ. And so tonight, I'm very excited to have two friends together in this conversation with me. And so if the team could help me to move to the next slide. Uh, and let me introduce the panelists tonight. Yeah, so Dr. Jiow is a media expert. His accolade is also very long, but I want to highlight, that he is really well versed in this area. When I first met Dr. Jiow, and actually I will call him Jhee tonight. When I first met Jhee, my children were very young. I was in his class learning about media literacy, and he has such good tips. And I was learning so much. I still learn a lot from him. He would be sharing with us, what are his research interests and how he raises his 4 children to have a balanced life, as well as ensuring that their spiritual walk with God, continues to be strong. And so I believe that you would already read his a very esteemed background before you came. So I will not read off the slides because I think there are 3 slides if I'm not wrong. Yeah, he of course serves in various committees, including IMDA. IMDA stands for Infocom Media Development Authority, and he makes sure that the films that we watch are safe, and it's a balance. Give adults options while protecting children. Next slide. He currently serves as a deputy director at SIT. And Lydia, I met Lydia also at one of the sessions where I learned so much as a mother on how to communicate clearly to my children, and understanding how children think and how can we connect with them at a heart level. Lydia is a developmental and education therapist and psychologist, very experienced, working both in the corporate, and now her heart is also serving families. Next slide. Yeah. I think she also has got 2 more slides. Yeah, her heart is also with working with families. So I'm very glad that Lydia and Jhee have agreed to spend time together with us. Yes, thank you so much. And Lydia, of course, is also a mom, and she has 2 teenagers. So tonight, first and foremost, we are fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, and we are also fellow parents, figuring out how we can steward technology and ensuring that our children have good mental health. And so thank you, team. If Joyda could help me to put the link in Slido. Okay, so now that you know who we are, let's get to know one another in the room. Okay, so I am going to share my screen. Yeah, so you would see the link in Slido. Okay, and that is the place where you would be able to go in and let's get to know each other in the room. Okay, when you click on the link, you should be able to see a poll. Okay, so indicate how old your children are. Okay, so that we can be more specific later when we address some of your questions, and we can tailor. Okay, is it coming up? All right. Yes. Are you able to see my screen? Lydia can see my screen? Okay. All right. Yeah, so there is also a QR code on the top left corner. If you prefer to, you can also use another device, scan the QR code, or go to another tab, go to slido.com. The event code is D6Family. Okay, so let's see. Let's get to know one another. How old are our children? Okay, so the small number at the top right corner shows the number of people who are participating in this poll. So about half of us in the room have got children in primary school. And then the next highest is preschoolers. Okay, and some of us have got older kids. Okay, there are 34 people who are responding, but there are almost 60 of us. Okay, maybe can we hit 40? Click on the link in Slido. I think some who have just joined us, so maybe put the link in Slido again for those who have just joined us. Okay, yep, about 60% now. Okay, primary schoolers, and preschool. Okay, all right. Can I have two more? The rest, okay, yeah, we hit 40. Very good, very good. Okay, so half of us. Okay, let me make sure that everybody is muted so that we can focus. Uh, okay, okay, able to, oh, can the team help me to, yeah. All right, okay, so the next question. Okay, so how many of us think that your child, okay, is spending too much time on devices? 100, okay, 100% yes, ah. Okay, 29%. Okay, so let's see. Okay, none not sure. Okay, we have a position. Okay, how many of us think that our children is spending too much time? Every time I look at them, their hands on the device. Okay, majority of us think that yes. Some of us say no, maybe because there's so many things that they need to do, right? They need to do homework, they need to do research, do their project. And so it is a necessity of their generation, or even for us, our generation. So maybe the 3% not sure is because, but we are supposed to steward technology for Christ, right? So how? Okay, yep, thank you so much. One last question, okay, before I set the context for tonight's conversation. One last question. If your child looked at you, okay, look at us, would our children also find that we are spending too much time on devices? Okay, huh? Okay, also 100% yes, ah. Also, huh? Right? So we are in this together across generations. Right? This is something that God has blessed us with. When we look at our children, they are on their device. When our children look at us, we are also on screens, whether is it on our laptop, whether is it on our tablet, because there are so many things that we can do online these days, right? And even our Bible is with us all the time. Our Bible, right, is in maybe in one of the apps. Okay, so yeah, so we are in this together, and I thought that it's interesting, isn't it, that we have concern over our kids. Actually, when our kids look at us, they are also concerned that we are also spending a lot of time on screens, and we may not be paying attention to them, or we miss out certain cues that they may be giving us. Okay, so thank you so much. And so there is a Q&A tab um, on the Slido. So that is where you can put your questions as we go along. Okay, as I mentioned just now, or as Basti introduced just now, we talking about anxious generation, right? How can we raise children well in an anxious generation in the digital world? Okay, and the motivation for tonight's topic come from this new book that was published last year by Jonathan Haidt. And he traced technological development in the past 15, 20 years around the world. And he's trying to figure out, okay, how so much technological advancement should bring some benefits to us, right? Are our children doing well? And the conclusion is that actually our children are not doing well. Around the world, there are common issues, okay, especially relating to mental well-being. And he highlighted what he calls four foundational harms. We won't be covering this in too much detail, but I thought of just giving a flavor of perhaps maybe you might have similar questions. And this is where we can discuss together with Jhee and Lydia tonight. The fourth opportunity cost that the author says shows social deprivation, that our kids are still feeling lonely, like our young people feel lonely, even though they might be playing games with a lot of people, they might have many followers on social media, but yet their relationship with friends are not deep. Okay, and so that's one thing that he noticed. The other one is sleep deprivation. We are not sleeping enough. Okay, if I ask you whether you've slept enough, I have to raise hand first. I don't think I'm sleeping enough also, right? So it is also not just an issue with the kids, it's also with us. Okay, so how can we help our children to sleep better? Because sleep is one of the foundation blocks for good mental health. Number three is attention fragmentation. Our kids tend to multitask, right? They one laptop they can have many tabs. Okay, same as me, maybe same as many of you, right? You can have a laptop and then you have devices next to you, and then it's like we feel like we are doing many things at the same time, but actually that's not how our brains are wired. So later we can talk a little bit about what does it mean? Maybe when we multitask, do we really multitask? And the last one about addiction is the high level of dopamine, which is like a hormone that is released that make us feel good, and it's a reward hormone that make us go back, whether it's social media, whether it's a game, it makes us feel good, so we want to go back again. And so all these are enticing, especially our children and our young people with their growing brains. So sometimes it's very hard for them to come out of the virtual world. So this is what the author says about opportunity cost in the phone-based childhood. He says our children's childhood should rightfully be out there having physical experiences, what he calls embodied experience, that uses five senses that God has blessed us with. But now, because they're so much on devices, they are only using their sense of sight, sense of hearing, perhaps, and they are not, using the other senses as a human being should. Okay, and it's very interesting also in the book. I won't go through this in detail, but it has talked about spiritual practices that can counter some of the negative impact that our children may experience when they are on screen so much. Okay, and some of these things is quite interesting. The author is not a Christian. He studies spiritual practices across religion, and it distills some of these practices that he feels is a good balance. And for me as a Christian reading this book, I thought it's quite interesting because Christianity or our spiritual practices embodies all of this that can give a good balance. Like shared sacredness is like when we sing, when we worship God together. Okay, it gives us a experience that is outward looking and not so inward looking. That is always very individualistic. When we are on phones a lot, we are training ourselves to be very individualistic. Whereas when we are in a community, right, we go beyond ourselves, and that is important, right? Embodiment is about the physical experiences, as I mentioned briefly. Number three is about the importance of being still, being comfortable in silence, and being able to focus. Okay, when we are very used to always have earbuds, always scrolling, we kind of lose the ability to be still. And yet, when we want to deepen our relationship with God, we need to be comfortable with being still, slow things down, so that we can really focus on hearing the voice of God, right? So isn't it interesting that he points out these things in a secular book? And 456, I won't go into much detail, but essentially it's about moving outwards. Okay, transcending self or finding awe in nature is about moving beyond ourselves. Number five is also very interesting. Maybe I just talk very quickly. Be slow to anger, quick to forgive. Because he says when we are on social media a lot, sometimes we get very angry easily. We see somebody's post and we get very angry. Yeah, then we make very quick judgment. But we need to learn to be slow to anger. Isn't it interesting? So we're going to cover some of this tonight, and of course, we're going to address your question. Okay, I believe many of you come with concerns, either maybe with your own children, or maybe some of you are serving in children's ministry or youth ministry, and you are seeing certain trends. And so feel free to use Slido, go to Slido to ask your question rather than in the Zoom chat. In a moment, we would be turning that off so that we can focus on the panelists. And then if you see that there is a question that you would also like to ask, feel free to upvote it, and then I will bring it to the panelists as we have our conversation. Okay, so now I'd like to turn the time over to Jhee first. Jhee has been teaching youth at the university for many years and have been conducting research on the impact of digital devices on children, young people, as well as families. Jhee, you are also a father of 4 young people. And what are some trends that you have been observing over the years? And how do you think are the roles of the church and families in raising our young? Jhee, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Can I just check? Can everyone hear me? All good, right? Okay.
Yes, can.
I'm going to share screen. Let me just. Okay, just to check, you all can see my screen, right?
Can.
Can. Okay, cool. Yeah. So firstly, thanks, Carol, for the introduction. When you start talking about my accolades, and then you're saying that you have a lot because you're old, then suddenly I also feel very old. But I feel that I'm among family. Yeah, so just like what Carol said, I have four kids. So my kids range from 21 to down to 14. So I have three girls and one boy. The youngest is a boy, 14-year-old. So I kind of like prepared this sharing called impacts with a exclamation mark. The reason is because, hey, I think so I've been doing this cyber wellness work since 2001. Okay, so over the years, that's over 20 odd years ago. Over the years, I realized that the children change, the issues change, and the parents change also. Okay, so last time we were dealing with cases where you have a phone versus you don't have a phone. Last time the digital divide was like that. But now the digital divide, when you talk about digital divide, it's very different because you ask a 14-year-old what social media he or she uses is very different from another 14-year-old in the same class in school. So it's very different. So I actually titled this impacts with a question mark because I believe that some of these we are already familiar with. Some we have heard it on the newspaper, our friends and things like that. And then trends, as per what Carol mentioned just now. And then I'll go on to impacts question mark because there are some developments in this sphere when it comes to digital device use among children. Okay. Now, maybe I just want to set the context a little bit. Just hold on. Hope my slides are moving. Okay, I thought I want to set the context because whenever I give talks and all that, I speak in schools, I speak on research platforms. It is good to kind of like tell you where I'm coming from and where I get my experiences from as well. So partly it's due to research. So my area of expertise, I look at how parents manage their children's media habits. In fact, my PhD, in which Carol was in my class, I was actually looking at how parents manage their children's video gaming habits. So that's kind of like the research I do, more parenting stuff. I also interact with a lot of parents and school leaders because I get invited to talks, I get invited to small group sessions, sharing and things like that. I also get to speak to my children about their usage and sometimes they tell me what their friends are doing. And through my experience teaching students. Okay. Now, because of the nature, my context, I do get questions like, hey, you don't forget, there are some benefits with regards to using digital device. I say, yes, I know. There are. There are some people who find that they are otherwise not able to socially interact in the real world. Their first step in getting to socially interact in the real world is to interact in the online world first. They feel comfortable with a group of friends, they are able to transport that friendship and their social life into the real life. So I do acknowledge there are certain benefits with regards to device use, and these benefits will help in their mental well-being as well. However, what I'm going to talk about is largely impacts, and in my many years of looking at parental concerns, these are largely the few, I would say, impacts that parents have regards to use of digital device. Okay, so let me just share this first website when I talk about medical and physiological. Just hold on. So I'm actually sharing from this hospital website, KK, healthy screen use for young children. So if you look at where they come from, they are looking at it from a more medical and physiological perspective. So you're talking about developmental, they are saying excessive screen time at a young age has shown to impact social and cognitive development and all that. Just like what Carol was talking about when she shared about the book, The Anxious Generation. So just a sidetrack. I was actually reading The Anxious Generation. Then Carol said, hey, we're going to give this talk and we're going to use this book. Then I started speeding up my reading. So thankfully, I finished reading the book before coming here. Okay, so Carol, thanks for speeding up my reading. Then the other thing is myopia. I think these are some things that we are all aware of because it comes out in the newspapers and things like that. And definitely, when they recommend healthy screen usage, there is a time associated with it. And they have even recommendations for different age group. And this is from a very medical and physiological perspective on how they derive with this. I wouldn't go much into the studies themselves, but I think it's quite layman enough when we read this. I do read some of the studies, I do understand a little bit, but I'm not medically trained enough to explain to you all these things. Now, obviously, like what was mentioned, sleep, and then also it acts, sometimes they could be distracted while eating, and therefore, in academic literature, when you talk about physical activity, this is a time displacement effect. So when you have spent time on such, let's say, phone usage, there is less time spent on physical activity and things like that. Okay, so this is what I just basically wanted to share about impacts, which I don't want to dwell too much because I believe that we are all familiar with. Let me go on to social and familiar, and that's where some of my research looks into such impacts. When I show parents all this data, this research, medical and all that, and then I say, hey, they recommend screen time usage, this amount of time, etc. Beware about myopia and stuff like that. And then I ask them, so I actually ask their kids and say, hey, your parents got any limit for screen time or not? Yeah, have, playing games, like half an hour a day. I say, oh, okay. What about other screen usage? Oh, when it comes to study, research, unlimited. It's like, functionally, parents can accept, I can let my child do research if they're studying, using the screens and all that. I got no time limit whatsoever. But then when it comes to, recreational activities, these are the ones that typically have time limit. So for example, either playing video games or watching videos online. So every time I go to school or speak to parents, the first question they ask is that, what's, how much time should I give my child every day, right? Standard question. And, you'll be surprised when I say, oh, what if they're doing it for educational and research purposes? Then suddenly the parents will change their minds. So one approach that parents take, and it has impact on the kid, is they take a functional approach, meaning what are you using it for? And I think many of us also subscribe to that, a functional approach. We first want to know what they're using it for. And number one is obviously academics. Number two is more social. So if your child is talking to, let's say, their cousin and stuff like that, that parents are typically more favorable. Now, so those are what I would briefly describe as some of the impacts, which I trust that we are all more or less quite familiar with. But I want to go into trends, okay? Now, trends is where are we seeing things happening nowadays? And I just thought I'd draw your attention to this article. This is Channel News Asia. Okay. This was quite recent, and this was also coincide with the time where they launched the Growing Well, talk about the Growing Well study. So typically screen time they use for education or work on a typical day is that amount: entertainment, social networking, health and fitness, shopping. And then what we see later is that the devices that they are using on. Okay, so this has implications as well, because if you look at typically you spend more time looking at a smaller screen, it doesn't help your eyes. But if you're looking at a bigger screen, it's a little bit better on your eyes. So this kind of gives you a snapshot of what's happening. And recently as well, if you all read the newspaper about the Grow Well SG strategy, this is of concern nowadays because more and more teens are spending time online. And if you read again, like what was mentioned earlier in the anxious generation, you have isolation and disconnection. You have people, and this is quite prevalent in our social media landscape in the research studies that we read. When, on social media, you tend to see the best side of people, and sometimes you tend to compare whether it's your looks and stuff like that with what's out there, and then you kind of like feel bad about yourself, you start going to depression and things like that. So these are the trends. Firstly, they are using it more and more. The kids are using digital devices more and more. They are getting more socially isolated, as per what Carol shared earlier in anxious generation as well. Sleep deprivation is also going up and stuff like that. Now, one of the questions that was posed to me also was that, what do I see as a trend as I go around speaking to parents and as well as some of my students in school, my children and things like that. And one of the things that kind of like worries me is actually, which was also brought up earlier by Carol just now, is actually Gen AI. Okay, I mean, if you read this recent article, whether young children should use ChatGPT to learn, we are all still trying to find out. Even in the educational sector, we are also trying to find out what is a good balance between using Gen AI, etc. and things like that. And if you all know, Gen AI use is associated with things like deepfake. They are able to generate misinformation. They are able to generate images, especially when you talk about sexual image violence and things like that. So these are the worrying impacts of what's happening now with regards to Gen AI. The other thing, when I was talking to students and all that, the other thing that was of very much concern to me is, the thing about misinformation, right? Everybody knows, that, you must check the sources and things like that. We have programs, media literacy programs that goes out and says, you have to check the source, you have to actually go and search and find out, see whether it's a reliable source and things like that. And then when actually you ask some of these uni students that I interact with, not just my uni, but other universities, they know, but they don't check. They just don't check. And they think that their source is correct. So what we see is a lot of biasness. They see information that they think that it kind of like confirms their original beliefs, but they don't really check, although they know that they should check. So you ask me what are some of these concerns that I have regards to the impacts of digital device use. This will be an example of it. Now, then if you look at, if you look at what are the roles we should be playing, I thought I want to look at this suggestion from the anxious generation. So, the author was talking about these few ways that we can address the issues that we face today. Voluntary coordination, social norms and moralization, technological solutions, laws and rules. I thought I just want to share with you the landscape because I have followed this landscape for quite some time. it actually started back in the earlier days as a lot of the responsibility lies with the parents, with the schools and things like that. But nowadays, if you look at let's say the past 7 years or 5 years, you see legislation changing. You see responsibility being more and more shifted to the tech companies themselves also. And we are actually seeing this change also largely because it is a very tough battle for parents to handle. Really very tough battle for parents to handle. I mean, when we talk about, last time when I talk about monitoring, right? Parents, we tell them parents, supervise. It's so difficult. I mean, I have this kid plays on the laptop, and this mom says, she password protects it so that the teen cannot play game on the laptop and stuff like that. And then when I interview the child, I say, hey, how are your mom did this? You cannot play it. Then the teen told me, yeah, actually can. My mom doesn't know, but I actually installed a camera behind her looking at the keyboard. So every time she type in the password, I know. And then so the kid knows how to circumvent all this kind of thing. So it is very difficult for parents. And nowadays, when devices are smaller, they have higher processing speed. Now that we move on to the cloud and all that, games are no longer just something that you have to buy a device and attach it. It is streamed onto the small mobile device. More and more difficult to actually monitor. Now, if you ask me what are the roles that we can play, whether it's the church, family, and all that, one of the things that struck me was this parent. When I did my research, this parent actually said that, if you can get parents of your child's friends together on board, it helps a lot in managing the child. So what this parent did was, because the child was gaming big time, this parent actually one time invited all the child's friends over to his house to game overnight. Okay. This kid was 15 years old, and in order for that to happen, the parent actually had to get in contact with his kid's friends' parents. Okay, so after he got to know them as a community, they kind of built a parents' community. And what happened was that, like 2 weeks before exams, the parents decided that they collectively embargo their kids from playing computer games. And it worked. He has been trying to get his kid on his own to do it, but it wasn't successful. But then he could, when he got all the parents together and say, hey, shall we impose this all collectively on our kids? And then it worked. And then the best part was that because all the friends had to come over to his house, therefore the friends actually met the father of this child. And then when this child actually complained to his friends, my dad, he went to, have this game restriction on me and things like that. And then all the friends say, hey, actually, you should listen to your dad. Your dad quite nice. That day we met him and all that. So one of the things that Jonathan also brought out is voluntary coordination. And this is something that I feel that we can do as a community. I don't have really a good response to this, but I have seen some examples. I have read the book as well on how some of these successes can be attained. And I think through voluntary coordination, obviously, you are able to kind of like manipulate or adjust social norms in the child's community as well. Like I said, technological solutions, I think that's ongoing. Laws and rules, I think that's ongoing. We are seeing a shift in all that as well, where laws are coming into place to help protect children. I'm sure you read about the social media ban over in Australia that's coming into effect. I had an opportunity to read more about it because I was asked for a radio interview, so I better get up to speed with it. But you can see this kind of movements going globally. So I thought I would kind of like end here. I think the what I tried to bring across was that firstly the kind of impacts that we are most likely familiar with are the trends that we are seeing these few days, especially with Gen AI. I think some of these trends we already know: increased usage, increase in social isolation, as what Carol has mentioned just now. And then I also shared what I see in some of the youth today in my university, as well as interacting with my children. They know some of these, but yet they're still doing. And then I thought I'd take off from the book, The Anxious Generation, on some of the roles that we may want to explore collectively as a community. And I thought I'll
Yeah.
just and I hand over the time to Carol. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jhee. Yeah, so it sounds like all of us can play a part in helping our children to balance their online and offline lives. Thank you so much, Jhee. I think we'll circle back to you with more questions later. I'll pass the time over to Lydia. Lydia is an educational therapist and a psychologist, as well as a mom of two youths. What are your thoughts on the impact of devices, whether they are social media, online gaming, pornography, and now Gen AI, as G has mentioned? And what is the impact of all this on the physical, intellectual, emotional, and social and spiritual development of our children and youth? Lydia?
Okay, thanks, Carol. I hope everyone can hear me. Unfortunately, I have not had time to put everything I want to share today on a slide set, so please bear with me. I will try to reiterate some points that I feel may be something that I feel resonates to what I'm hoping to share today. And I think as a start, I'm also coming from a place. Oh yeah, by the way, thanks G for all of that, because I think that what he shared just gave me something to springboard off, because I will now take a very different perspective for the topic tonight. And I just hope that what I share would hopefully spark perhaps curious conversations. If it makes anyone uncomfortable, I will in advance apologize. But I understand D6 being a conference where we are, a family of God coming together to seek, greater wisdom in dealing with generational battles, so to speak, for our children, for ourselves. And so I do want to start with a disclaimer. I come from a place of humility. I do not have the answer. I won't pretend to have them. So as much as I'm sharing with you guys, it's very much something that I am abiding in for myself. I am hoping very much, like everyone here in this Zoom room, to seek God for that wisdom as well. So starting off from that, my context would be everything that I'm sharing is coming from both professional and personal journeys with God. I'm a psychologist. I primarily focus on developmental psychology, so basically development of humans from cradle to grave. So typically, a developmental psychologist focus primarily on physical development, cognitive, emotional development, social development. So the three big aspects coming together to form what makes each and every one of us tick. The book from Jonathan Haidt is very much written from a social psychology's perspective. And from that perspective, there's a lot of data and stats that I think I will leave in the hands of everyone in the room. But I will hopefully, what I'm trying to do is bring us out into a broader perspective, hopefully, to understand. I would actually like to start from a biblical perspective as opposed to ending on it. I notice psychologically, from a research perspective, a lot of us look to psychology for information and data, and then we end the conversation with what is the biblical perspective of it. I actually, in my journey, and this is the context, over 20 years, 20 years ago to over 20 years ago, I was very privileged to be teaching in the Bible college, and the primary focus of teaching was in human development. So I had battled with this topic with God about psychology and the development of humans and what God wants us to see differently from what humans psychologists see in the data that we collect. And I think it's been an interesting journey since the early 2000s for me. And I would like to offer all of us a turn everything on its head perspective, hopefully. And so I do hope that, if there are any questions, please raise them later. But I do hope that my sharing will spark deeper conversations, greater curiosity, and the way maybe we approach, from a church and family perspective, the way we approach the battles that our generations are facing. So we're here to talk about the ancient generation, right? This is primarily focusing on the result of the digital age, screen fixations, global loss of human interaction. Like Jonathan says, oh, we need to go out there and really tussle each other face to face. And I think some of us in my generation, we talk about going to the longgangs and playing marble. The boys will catch the spiders. I mean, I know kids would pull off legs of ants and spiders. That's gross. But kids don't even do that today. Right. And so there's definitely a loss of that social reality, that face-to-face reality. Kids are building connections and relationships in games. And I've heard that parents learn to play some of these games so that they can enter game rooms to chat with kids through the messaging system. And so that's all very interesting for me because my husband and I actually do not game and our kids do not game. And so that's a very interesting phenomenon. Aside from that, my journey as a psychologist, as a parent coach and therapist, I've also worked in the corporate world dealing with HR issues where young generation of workers are on their mobile devices even as they work. And so that's a very different domain and dimension of struggle. I think we're all quite familiar with. I'm going to pull back a little bit. While I appreciate the data and the studies that Haidt has given us through his book, I'm also mindful that I've heard his interviews and interactions with other psychologists, neurobiologists in the research done. I have noticed that we are somewhat, we're doing the whole waxing lyrical of past generations as if the problems today are either a lot less or we were in a much better place. So from a generational perspective, if you could bear with me, I would like to suggest that every generation has its battles. And I think biblically, if we were to track from the New Testament back to the Old, and even in the New Testaments to today, sociologically, psychologically, every generation has what I would call a zone of takeover or entry points for invasion. So that's very spiritual, I suppose, perspective that enters into the human or the physical, emotional world. And I do believe that now we're dealing with social media and the fixations and addiction to everything the digital, age offers us. But I think not so long ago, maybe some of us are still in that generation where the fixation is building financial security. So we do everything and we go everywhere to invest, to find ways to build that economic security, just like young people today are trying to build their digital presence and identity, correct? So every generation, there's a fixation. That's what I'm asking for us to think about. Some of us go a little further back where education, it was the fixation. Get as many accolades. My mom came from a generation where when I first applied for my first job, she got me to put in my piano exam certs. And I'm like, why would my employer want to look at my piano exam certs? Because it's the generation of education, And so every generation, I believe, has its zones of takeovers. And I say takeover meaning a spiritual identity, a spiritual connection with our creator that gets taken over, gets invaded upon. And so, some of us, social status could be the generational pain. If we look at America's history, there is the industrial generation, the boomers. We all have different fixations. If we look at our digital age today, and what our children are struggling with, I do hope that perhaps we could maybe not look at what they are dealing with or what we're struggling with really as such a big problem we cannot overcome. And so I want to offer us the bigger question to ask is, where is God in all of these? And I'm asking this question because I find myself asking the question across all contexts and across all problems when I work with people I have therapy with. Where is God in this situation? Where is God in all of these fears we have? And I would like to offer us, a verse, a powerful verse from Isaiah 41. Verse 10 particularly, it says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And that's a powerful verse. I believe a lot of us, we sing it, "Fear not, for I am with you." We invoke it when we pray over our children and ourselves. But I would like us to think maybe a little bit on this verse to ask, when we say, "Fear not, for I am with you, God is with us," maybe the bigger question that's linked with my big question is, where is God in all of this? Is God with us? Sometimes we think, and I'm not accusing anyone that God's not with you. I'm just sometimes realizing that while we would like and we would want God to be with us in everything, sometimes we're so taken up and consumed by the day to day that God actually wasn't invited into that situation. And I'm saying this because I remember when I was really young, my mom had this picture hanging in the house of Jesus standing by a door. And that what's interesting about that door, I'm not sure how many of you are old enough to remember a picture like that, where that door where Jesus is standing by has no handle on the outside. The handle's on the inside. And that inside is where we are and where our children are. And so my mom used to tell me when I was a little girl, you have to consciously invite Jesus into that situation. But only you can open that door. And God gave us free will. So I was like, oh, so not like mummies and daddies who would bang on that door and threaten to shake the door down. God is a God that doesn't impose his will on us. He basically says, "I'm here. Will you let me in?" If you remember that story of the young rich man, when he came to Jesus, "I've done everything. I've checked all the boxes. What else do I do to get the kingdom of heaven?" And God looked at him and he said, "Sell everything you have and come with me." And the young rich man dropped his shoulders and walked off, saddened because clearly it was difficult. And Jesus said, easier it is for a camel to go through a needle of an eye than for a rich man to come into the kingdom. And I was reading that verse quite a few years back when I was teaching, and I was going, that's it. That's it. Jesus didn't go after him and do you better choose me, sell everything you have. You're not going to, otherwise you're going to regret it. So I'm imagining myself, because I'm working with parents, like, what would the typical parents say when the child walks off and not choose what we tell them is the right thing to do? We would shake that door down. We would run after them and badger. And so if we can hold that verse in our minds and think about the conversations we have with our kids, I would like us to realize that if we can consciously ourselves as parents invite God into that situation, or that struggle we have with our kids, whether it's screen time, whether it's control over the devices, whether it's our conversation, maybe it's something that God will give wisdom to when we engage our kids. So can he uphold us? Can he strengthen us? Is he with us? The answer is a resounding yes. But let's maybe consciously, based on everything Jhee has shared, which is, I'm very thankful I don't have to reshare it, can we look into those areas and say a prayer over it and ask Jesus to come in? Even for us as parents, we have our own strongholds as well for us to consider. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that with you. I'm going to move a little bit to the recognition that Carol did set me a task to talk about the impact of the digital world on the emotional, on the intellectual, on the spiritual, the physical development. Jhee has done me a great favor. He's done all that, myopia lah. It's taken a couple of generations. One area of research, if you're curious, maybe Google out and search what it does to the neurological connections in your child's brains. I won't go into the detail. It messes with our kids' brains like nobody's business. So I will tell you, as a developmental psychologist, when the whole world shifted into social media, into devices, and there were all kinds of educational apps that came up, the one thing I stood very firmly against was letting our kids, my two kids, learn math, learn numeracy, and learn literacy from these very attractive apps. Why? Because back then I felt I had enough information to say, let's just go analog. Let's just go mommy, daddy, and child time. So parents, I know a lot of you have put in Slido, you've got kids who are preschool. If you can help it, I strongly recommend get off those apps. because the price you're going to pay, it's not worth it. Okay, so of course the choice is yours. If you're enjoying it as much as your child, that's something perhaps you guys can negotiate to a percentage of the time of the day. I will recommend those of us with kids slightly older in primary school, if possible, have deeper conversations about what these apps and these enjoyments do for your kids. And then seriously consider, take the neurological data and say, I really love you and I really don't want your brains to be messed up. And for you to discover 5 to 10 years down the road, look at me and go, why didn't you stop me? All right, so that part I leave with you from a developmental front. Please, there are lots of information and research out there. It's taken a couple of generations, unfortunately. That's how research works. It takes a lot of data before we can confirm that this is not helpful. I would like us to consider spiritually, again, how do we approach this conversation with our kids about technology, about social media, about creating an ID for themselves in IG and TikTok, whatever the platforms may be. I would like for us to consider that there is a difference between the worldview and kingdom view. So if you read all the psychology reports, the worldview sector of it has already given us a lot of good evidence. And Jonathan Haidt, I like what he's done. He's primarily pieced together a timeline to show us socially, globally, what it's done in terms of depression rates, in terms of suicidal rates, in terms of loneliness rates, in terms of all the other problems that the psychological diagnostic manual would have listed as potential issues that our current and future generations are going to face. I would like us to pull back a little bit and think about the worldview versus kingdom view, because otherwise, without that differentiation, we would really just be battling what is better for our kids, and we're not sure how long that perspective or that measure or that action is going to last. Like even limiting screen time, cutting it down to number of minutes a day, and I like how Jhee mentioned. I think something to do about practical Asians, right? As long as it's functional, it helps them get a good degree or good grades or good job. Yeah, why not? And the reality is the digital platform does offer all of us a lot of resources at the tip of our fingers. Like even for me, now you don't even have to go to the library to hunt down readings and journals. You can just go on Google on different platforms and you can find what you need. But beyond that, the worldview, very simple. I'm going to bring it down to the simplest form. The worldview says that we are bodies defined by our soul, the soul being the intangible personality, feelings, thoughts, and so on, with the hope to touch some element of spiritual actualization or spiritual connection with God. But I feel strongly in the journey that I've taken that in the kingdom view through scriptures, we are first and foremost spirits. We are spirits yearning and we're defined by God, and we're yearning for communion with our Creator. Now, if we see it in the reverse, the impetus, the motivation to keep and sanctify our relationship with our kids, our use of media, and what we do in our everyday life, that completely changes. It's no longer what meets needs. It's what keeps us in connection with our Creator. And it's no longer the soul defining us, but the Creator God, our Abba Father, that defines us, right? And we are spirits yearning communion with our Creator, and we grapple with our soul. In the world we live today, I mean, I'm sure all of us read online what's going on in the West, right? The soul defines and marks what life's reality should be. But in scriptural terms, we grapple with our souls. And so there are Bible verses that says we hold captive every argument and thought unto Jesus, right? And so we actually are told that we must grapple with our soul, our inner workings and our human desires. So parents, you can tell your kids, yeah, it's quite fun to scroll through Instagram, right? All these interesting video reels that makes us feel good. We decompress after a long day of work. I mean, to be honest, I think all of us do enjoy some of that. My kids will bring some really funny videos. We all have a good laugh over it. The family decompresses. So I don't know that this is in itself the problem. It's something bigger. So if we actually look at our soul as something we grapple with, and that we live in a temporal body. We are called to be obedient as we wait for eternity. The entire process is reversed. I'm not sure if this is making a difference for any one of us, but I'm hoping that you can actually imbibe some of that. Now, if we take the kingdom view of who we actually are supposed to be, not the body defined by the soul, right? Hoping somehow, some way to sometimes spiritually actualize, but we are really spirits made by God, for God, defined by God. We grapple with our soul, and that's why there's this whole New Testament scripture about dying to self. Those who are, fight hard to live will find themselves losing their lives fastest. But those who are willing to die find their lives saved. And that's just the topsy-turvy world kingdom view of God. And from that perspective, we live in a temporal body and a world. So we are taught actually don't fixate on the mundane because it's temporary. And so what does this mean? What is Lydia talking about, rambling about worldview, kingdom view? I would like us to think that the stark difference helps us then identify the enemy we're dealing with. It's not the digital age. It's not the devices. And for those of us from earlier generation, it's not education. It's not money or financial security or wisdom per se. But the enemy here is the vacuums that gets invaded upon. So the enemy stays in invading the vacuum that is not filled by God. Back to the definition of spirit. So if we're spirits defined by God, craving communion with our Creator God, what the enemy is trying to do is fill these definitions and craving with something else, whatever that generation may be dealing with. That is the work of the enemy. So we should not look at the thing or the platform or the instrument as what we're fighting against. We need to understand it's much deeper and it's more pervasive and it's more insidious. So let's hold that thought. I would like us to think also that, as I was praying through this sharing today, I do have 3 core points for us to consider. I know I'm running short of time, but I'm just going to give us, 3 core points. We're dealing with, if you're looking at the digital age, parenting in such a way so that our kids are not anxious, so that we are not anxious. There are 3 areas of vacuums that we need to pay attention to. 1, the vacuum of creation purpose. And that creation purpose should and can only be filled with the Creator, right? 2, vacuum of relational intimacy. And that relational intimacy is with our Master. Okay, so back to the first point, vacuum of creation purpose with the Creator addresses why we are drawn, or why our kids are drawn to media. Because they want to know what the world is saying about what life offers. They want to see who is receiving all the likes, because that gives a sense of purpose, doesn't it? It gives that sense of identity. It gives people the sense of worth, that people like me, I must be something. And it gives them a sense of empowerment and agency. But that's a vacuum of creation purpose that was meant for our Creator. The second point of vacuum of relational intimacy, that interaction, that connection is supposed to be with our Master, where if we are masterpieces, the Master defines what kind of masterpiece we are. And that relational intimacy that has a vacuum is what the digital age is filling for this generation. Communication and connection with people who don't know your children for the problems we as parents maybe flag up on a daily basis to help them, is their way of hoping to find maybe someone that will love them for who they present without feeling like they still need to check this list of boxes. They will only be loved and worthy of love when they get somewhere, when they become something. And our young people are yearning for connections with people who are like-minded and like-spirited. And that desire to be online, to meet people, to put themselves out there, I'm proposing it's coming from that vacuum of relational intimacy. The third one, vacuum of God's dominion. And that sounds really big, but it is big in the sense that if there's God's dominion across our life, across every decision we make, then godly wisdom and the discernment in the age of knowledge is what will help our young people and us as parents to look at what's available, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's DeepSeek, whether it's any form of new platforms of information that's going to come at us, there will be godly wisdom that will guide us. And there are passages in the Bible across the New Testament that tells us the difference between godly wisdom and human wisdom. Yeah. And that's something of a different for a separate conversation.
Mm.
All right. Now, the
Thank
three, I'm just going to give a little bit more before I close. The first one, just put the notes down and see whether we can have a separate conversation elsewhere or with your community, your parenting village. The vacuum of creation purpose really covers your children's identity, who they are, their worth. Are they really someone valuable? Their esteem, I'm someone that can do and can grow and can choose. And these are conversations. So I don't want to end my session feeling, oh, so many vacuums, how to fill. As parents, my charge and challenge to all of us, myself included, is that we are instruments of God in our children's life to be extensions of Him, that while we can't fill the vacuum, we allow God to pour through us. So that as parents, we help our children find their identity. We help them build their worth without being condescending about their mistakes, by celebrating who God made them to be uniquely. And then the vacuum of relational intimacy, helping them relate back to God, knowing and looking for experiences through which God is present. So I'll give you one example. My little girl back then, it's been a while. Tokidoki, blind boxes, I think it's still around. If parents, we can seek God ourselves to give our kids the experiential relationship encounters we got. That will be the start for them to realize that they are created by a bigger God for a purpose, and they can have relational intimacy through us as parents with God, right? And from that perspective, my little girl was wanting to buy this particular unicorn on the shelf that we couldn't decide. It's all blind boxes. So we said a little prayer, and I was like, can I really do this? So I prayed about it, and I felt, okay, let's just go with it. We prayed about it. There was a whole shelf she chose from. She picked it up. Just as we were paying for that one box, she ran back and decided to choose something else she started with. And when we opened it up, and we said, Da, this is really between you and God. We'll see what God says. She opened that box, and that experience of the very unicorn out of that 20 in the shelf that came out. And I say, did you know this? Did I know this? We didn't. So what I'm trying to say in one simple example is, if we can, as parents, ask God for opportunities to connect them with God, for them to have supernatural experiences through your relationship with them, these build trust bonds and love that will draw them away from seeking all of that in the virtual world. And then, of course, the vacuum of God's dominion, it's not something we can fill because it's huge. That's why God's dominion. But we can go on journeys of searching and adventures with our kids, so that when they are online, we search with them. For those of us parents with kids are very, very young, you are in a better place because there's no history yet. Start with them. Don't let them go off on their own. Those of us with much older kids that already are online, have their own identity, pray about having that conversation over the 3 areas of vacuums, so that perhaps as the Lord leads, you will actually have the intimacy with your child, build them in their awareness of their creation purpose, and allow God to speak through you, to you, and with your children in terms of all the information that they receive online.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry for
So
taking
much.
too long. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lydia. It sounds like we need a book from Lydia as well. Can we
Mhm.
all give our panelists a big round of applause, show some emoji, show them some love? Thank you so much. I think both of them give us a different perspective to these issues about devices. And if I could start off with the top question in Slido. Which is about how do we manage a situation if our children don't have a device while the church community and their friends do, and they feel left out. And if we take what Lydia was sharing with us, that we first see our children first as a spiritual, right, and then layer on to the physical. Then how do we in a developmentally appropriate way broach this thing about peer pressure, like fear of missing out? How does that practically what can we practically do? because I think in our mind we understand cognitively, the spiritual and things like that. But practically, how do we help our children when their own walk with God is not yet as strong? So maybe Lydia first, and then perhaps Jhee could weigh in as well. Lydia?
Okay, yeah, I think that's a very important and very real question. FOMO, fear of missing out, fear of not knowing what's going on. I think there are there are a lot of reactions to Jonathan Haidt's book. There are a lot of reaction to conversations and research against digital media. But I think the reality is a lot of psychologists have come up to say, actually, if parent and child can build trust bonds and relationships that can anchor the child, a lot of fear of missing out is something that can be mitigated by the parents. So if there's any one thing parents can work on with children, is have deeper conversations with them about who they are, actually consciously talk about what you as a parent really love about them as children, build that connection, build that sense of awareness, by your child, that you are truly interested in them, and that everything that they are interested in, that you could be on the journey with them. That means as long as they're interested in something, they come and talk to you about it. That's the first step. Once they come and talk to you about it, you can work with them to see what's really beneficial, what's really not. Then talk about pros and cons and what price they have to pay. And then open the choice up to say, do you think you're ready to pay that price? Of course, it's kind of iffy if it's a big decision. That's why if your kids are younger or even older, start with doable choices that the natural consequences, if they choose to venture out, isn't going to hurt so bad that the remediatory steps, will come and hit quite hard. So start with the small things, help the child to converse with you, unpack what are you fearful of missing out? What's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? And if you miss out, does that really affect the wonders of who you are, the fulfillment of your day to day? And I think at the end of it, again, this conversation must be hinged on that trust bond between parent and child. Yeah.
Is there like an age that this approach will work better? Is it like for older kids? Or so does it mean that for younger kids, you might need to have a stronger boundary because they may not be able to or
Sure.
articulate or
Sure.
rationalize? Yeah.
Yes. So of course, the older the child gets, maybe the more complicated their wants and desires may be, right? From a developmental standpoint. But even for very young children, now this is where parents, we need to pray for creative juices and creative engagement ways. Some parents use little puppets, some parents use stuffed toys, or some parents, like for me, I've actually noticed some of the cartoons my kids used to love, whether it's Little Pony or Transformers, and have conversations, with them about similar situations or adventures that my child is probably wanting to explore. Then, because there's a storyline, there's something of a discussion, even for very young kids. Simple things like, I want to learn to iron. So some kids are very curious. Oh, what are you doing ironing clothes? I want to try. Really? Can you try and see how heavy it is? So don't immediately say no, because the minute you say no, you slam the door down on a why not? I must do it. I want to find out. So that picks the wrong kind of curiosity. Let the child take on baby steps with some of the things they're curious about. Use creative ways to engage them. So it can actually start very young. Some kids would say, I want to bring my Lego to school. Why not? Right? And parents could say, well, this is a very precious Lego to you. What if you lose it? Are you willing? So some parents I've worked with actually tried it. Of course, in the best case scenario, they didn't lose it. They tried something. They don't want to miss out bring favorite toys to school, but some kids lost it. And parents go, parents comfort the child first, but then reiterate. Now you understand why I was asking you, maybe not, at least not your favorite toy. So you're actually kickstarting a thought process at a very young age. And I've worked with kids as young as 3, 4 with simple singular words, not a full sentence. And they are able to comprehend some of that, believe it or not. So start with very small, harmless, somewhat kind of choices, of missing out, they're wanting to try something, but make sure it's not a punishment inflicted by you if something happens, like, oh, I told you not to, you brought it. Okay, we shall not have any more new toys. That's a humanly inflicted punishment that unfortunately will make the child look at you as the parent, as the person inflicting the pain. Use natural consequences. so that when they realize, oh, I did choose to bring it, and yes, you did say that it could get lost. Whether or not somebody took it is a separate conversation, but that was a price they're willing to pay. And that actually leads a 3, 4-year-old child leading to 5, 6 to think a little bit. And you'll be surprised. Some of these kids I work with will come back and ask, is the same thing going to happen? They will apply it to a different situation, and they'll tend to come and ask you for some of these
Right.
things. Yeah.
So the importance of having a strong relationship, that
Yeah.
the ability to connect and ask, because this process takes time. It is much
Yes.
easier to just give
Yeah.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it takes a lot more energy and time. Thanks, Lydia. Jhee?
Yeah, that very good point brought up by Lydia. Maybe I share two examples that I've encountered. One is that I know in some of these parent community sessions, one of the things that parents can do, or one of the things that parents have shared they have done successfully, is that they kind of like loan the phone or the device to the child. That means it is not ownership, but it is a usage. So for a certain period of time, the child actually just reads up on what's going on, and then after that, return. I know some parents also join groups declaring that, hey, I'm the parent of child so and so. I'm just joining these groups in order to curate the content or the interactions and things like that. Maybe I share a story that's more personal. So I didn't let my child have a phone until quite okay, socially in her school until quite late. Okay, so you compare her school, many of her friends have phones and all that. So she was in the netball team, and then they were sharing certain netball drills and moves over, I think it was WhatsApp. And then my daughter felt a bit left out because she doesn't have that device. It was interesting because when she raised this up to the team, actually there were some of the teammates who actually physically go to her in school and update her on what was happening in the chat group. So she didn't feel out of place. And I guess that alludes to largely what Jonathan was talking about when he talked about, voluntary, um, you know, voluntary action kind of thing, where you try and get the group and change the social norms. The question here refers to the church community. My experience with the church community is that they are typically more accommodating. And I'm not sure, but if you were to be able to speak to some of the members in the church community, I'm not sure whether how far they're willing to, accommodate to a situation where the child does not need a device. And for all you know, this could start a movement, and the church themselves may put less requirement on children to have phones and devices. So that's my take, sharing a few examples and my take on this.
Yeah, thanks, Jhee. It is interesting. Let me just add Lydia as well. And it is interesting when Jhee, you shared about how uh yeah, it's okay. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Because I'm looking at the time, I'm mindful of time. We had such good conversation, and there are many other great questions in Slido. And so Lydia and Jhee have agreed to stay on until 10, but we know that we said we would end at 9:30. And so whoever needs to go off at 9:30, you can. But if you prefer to stay on, we would continue with as many questions as possible. But with the remaining time, we have got 10 more minutes. I do want to invite Jhee and Lydia to share perhaps your encouragement, especially in terms of how we can balance between, ensuring not just a healthy online and offline life, but really how do we see, like what Lydia was sharing, that they are first spiritual? How do we ensure that their spiritual formation it's strong and healthy, that they can experience God, and the vacuums that they have is filled with the right things of God, while at the same time we are trying to let them benefit from the exposure of technology and learn how to steward technology for Christ. How do we balance all this? Maybe in the next few minutes, if I could ask Jhee and Lydia to share, like, what are your final thoughts for parents who might need to go off at 9:30? Jhee, would you like to go first?
Sure. I mean, in all my thoughts, this is something that I believe ever since many years ago when I became a Christian. And this is, I think, something that was imbued in me since young. And that is the importance of a community, lah. So I guess, from young, in my uni days, we have always taught to be in small groups and cell groups. And we were practicing accountability very heavily. And if you ask me, even at this age and the stage of life that we're at, we still cannot run away from community, because they are the ones that will help us check on us. They are the ones that we learn from. They are the ones that we will kind of like rub our shoulders with, and even kind of like they are able to spot our blind spots. So even as a researcher, there was one time I remember I think I received a message that I thought was legit, but still there was some part of me that felt that it could be a scam. I didn't know. I tried to check online with what I know on how to check and stuff like that. I still didn't. And I reached out to my researcher friend. And I mean, we have this community. And he was able to point out and say, hey, look, this is probably a scam lah. And therefore, I did not respond. And true enough, a few days later, it came out in the papers that there was a widespread scam that's going on. So again, I would want to reiterate, stay in community, stay in the church community, and come back to them in your journey, in parenting, in your journey in digital device use.
Yeah, thanks, Jhee. So it's important for parents to be in community, and also to help our children to also have a healthy community in church, especially as they grow, especially for the youth, right? That they transit well from children's ministry to youth group. Yeah, thanks, Jhee. Yeah. Lydia?
Okay, I think if there's anything that I would like to just encourage parents with, I would like to take all of us, and that's something I like to do with parent groups. I would like to just ask all of us, with all your worries and fears and apprehensions and all the choices and decisions you have to make every day, just take a moment and go back to the day you were holding your child, every single one, when they were first born, and just go back to that moment of wonder. That wonder that you've been gifted with such an amazing gift of life. And I just want us to just hold that thought and that sentiment, that wonder and that expectancy, and just hold on to it. If there's anything about how to raise a generation that's not anxious, I feel that it's very much tied to the wonder we attain and we receive from our God. And that's an experience I feel all parents have at least experienced a good enough number of time when you're holding your child. Now, when you hold that thought, translate that as much as possible to an everyday engagement with your child, so that we don't let the day-to-day hustle and bustle, don't let the day-to-day demands of society and the world make us forget that God gave us this gift of life, and that we too are gifts by God, and in our love journey with God. How can we, I guess, ask God to give us the wisdom to help our children experience our love and wonder towards them? Because I know we're Asians, right? A lot of us here, we live in a very practical Asian world and society, right? And sometimes the day-to-day survival takes over. If anything, how to raise a generation that's not anxious, I think digital media aside, Just take those moments. At the start of the day, tell your children how much you love them and why. At the end of the day, stop and ask them how their day was. Offer the physical engagement and comfort. Listen to them emotionally to say you're not alone. Spiritually pray with them and remind them that there is a bigger purpose. And Jeremiah 29:11 is not joking. It's not meant to make us feel good. God really has a perfect plan for each one of us. If we can talk about this, build relationships between parent and children from that premise where our children's first encounter of love, our children's first encounter of trust and wonder is to see the wonder shining on our faces as parents towards them, and letting all the practical demands and the tedious futility of achievement fall away. I honestly believe at a spiritual level, the soul is touched. When the soul is engaged and they're told that the Creator has something more, what does the digital age have to offer that this wonderment doesn't already fill? So parents, if you could just take those moments, spend it with your children, help them experience your wonder and help them receive and believe, really believe that they are loved and therefore they're not lonely. And that way, the world's attractive devices, the world's trappings of this generation or beyond will will not scream as loudly because they're already held secure in the three vacuums I mentioned. They are already secure, in their creator's hands.
Thank you so much, Lydia and Jhee, for sharing. So let me just bring Jhee back as well. Can we give our panelists a big round of applause? You can share your appreciation with them also in the chat. Now it's open to everyone. And really, it's if I could wrap up, it's maybe the solution to not raising an anxious generation. It lies with us, parents, communities in church, communities of our young people, ensuring that they continue to grow healthy in their youth community, so that we can all walk towards God, and then through that, when we have a good relationship with God and in community, then we can steward our digital devices well and know how to use that wisely and have a good balance. So the solution really lies with us. And so before we close, can we just pray together, and then later on there'll be some announcements. Okay, yeah. So shall we close this time in prayer? Father, we thank you, Lord, for giving us technology for such a time as this. Thank you, Lord, for revealing to each one of us in this virtual room on what you are calling us to respond in this season where we have so much power that you have placed in our hands through social media or even now Gen AI. Father, would you give us wisdom to be able to use this technology for your purposes, and give us wisdom to be able to train up your children the way that you want them to go in the increasingly complex world with the powerful devices. Give us wisdom to be able to reach and shepherd their hearts despite all the complexities. Give us wisdom to slow down ourselves as your children first and foremost, so that we can draw close to you and we can hear clearly from the Holy Spirit on how you want to use us to train up your children the way that you want them to go. So we thank you for tonight. Thank you for Jhee and Lydia for their ministry. And we just thank you, Lord, for revealing to us, even as we depart from this meeting. Father, would you continue to speak to each one of us? We give you all praise and glory, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. There will be some announcements, everybody. Okay, before you go off, can I invite everybody to put in the Zoom chat? Okay, what is one thing that you took away from tonight's conversation so far? Okay, those who need to go back to your family at 9:30, please leave your learning point before you go, or in appreciation to Lydia and Jhee. Okay, those who want to hang back, we have got a few questions that we will continue to address, but I know it's late. So please leave your learning point. And then Basti, can I pass the time over to you for some announcements?
Yes, thank you so much. So let me just share my screen first for our announcements. Once again, a heartfelt thank you to our amazing panelists. Can we give them a heart reaction or clap reaction to show our appreciation? We are truly grateful for your time you've taken to be with us and the wisdom you have shared with everyone tonight. Thank you so much once again. And thank you, Carol, for facilitating this session. So first, we have a few announcement that you might want to be interested in. So first, we have sow into the ministry. If you want to bless the mission, there are many ways you can help sow the word and be part of the Bible mission. So you can screenshot this or scan the QR code that you see on screen if you want to bless the Bible mission there. And next, we have this event. So Carol facilitates the book club that discusses Anxious Generation over 4 weeks in Zoom. So the details about this event are in the link and we will send it in our chat room. So this talk about what our children need to thrive as human beings and how the foundational harms are impacting them: social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction, and so on and so forth. So, if you want to join Carol in this 4 week event through Zoom, you can scan the QR code or click the link that will be sent in our chat group. Next, last but not the least, as what I've mentioned earlier, we have an upcoming D6 Family Conference 2025 this 25 to 26 July. And you can register by scanning the QR code as you seen in your screen. And today we have a special promo for everyone who are in our Zoom tonight. So the regular rate for this one is 160 and 750 for group, but in this special promo code you can now get the tickets for only $140. So everyone, we encourage you to join us. This is a very special event because not only we are giving a lot of workshops here, but also we are celebrating 10 years for our D6 2025 and D6 Family Ministry Conference. So those of you who would like to join in, you can register in the by using the QR code or register by clicking the link that will be provided in our chat room again. So yeah, thank you all so much. That will be our announcement. Can I